let's take a look at this problem right here. We're again going to solve using the quadratic formula, and we have the quadratic formula right here. We need to first determine what our a, b, and c values are. And so in this question, what number is in front of the quadratic term? Well, that's a 1. We have negative 6 as our b value. And we have negative 11 as our c value. So let's rewrite the quadratic formula, but instead of a, b, and c, we're going to use these numbers. So minus, remember b value is negative 6, plus or minus the square root of negative 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 11. And that's all over 2 times 1. Well, the opposite of negative 6, or negative 1 times negative 6, is positive 6, plus or minus the square root of 36, because negative 6 squared is 36, minus negative 4 times 1 times negative 11 is negative 44. So it's all over 2 times 1, which is just 2. Let's change colors, make it a little easier to see. So we have 6 plus or minus the square root, and I'm going to add these two numbers together. And it's 36 minus, oh, sorry, plus. Why is it plus? That's a good question. Let's look at that. A negative times a negative is a positive. So we add these two numbers together, and we get 80. All over 2. So at this point, 80 is not a perfect square. So we need to get this into simplest radical form now, don't we? So what goes into 80 that is a perfect square? Let's see. Does 4 go into it? Yes. What about 16? I believe 16 does go into that number. Let's just double check. 80 divided by 16, and we're going to get 5. Sweet. So we know that the square root of 80 can be written as the square root of 16 times the square root of 5, and the square root of 16 is 4. So the square root of 80 can be written as 4 times the square root of 5. So to give an answer in simplest radical form, we're going to be left with 6 plus or minus 4 times the square root of 5 over 2. And this is my answer in simplest radical form, although I notice that 6 and 4 both share the factor of 2, so it can be reduced to, I'm going to get rid of my simplest radical form calculation. Okay, so it can be reduced to 3 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 5. But we want our answer also in decimal form. So let's take a look at positive world and negative land. So we have 6 plus the square root of 80 divided by 2. In negative land, we have 6 minus the square root of 80 over 2. So the square root of 80 is 8.94. And we're going to add 6 to it, and then divide by 2. So I get, in this case, x is equal to 7.47. Over on this side of the aisle, we have the square root of 80 again, and it's a negative in this case. I'm going to add to it 6, and so divided by 2. And so over here, x is equal to negative 1.47. So So there are my two possible answers. Now, if I were rounding to the nearest tenth, I would look at the hundredth and notice that it is more than 5. So really, round to the nearest tenth, we have x is equal to negative 1.5. Over here, same deal, 7 is more than 5. So that's going to round this up to 7.5.